On today's episode of Dance Med Spotlight, we're talking with Dr. Chelsea Pierotti. She is a sports psychologist and high performance coach for dancers and dance educators. She works as a speaker, workshop teacher, and podcast host with a mission to create happier, more successful dancers with positive mental skills. In today's episode, as always, we talk about a lot of different topics, focusing primarily on the dancer's perspective, but also dance educators and dance parents supporting those dancers. Some of our topics include things like building confidence, overcoming comparison, finding motivation, how do we combat favoritism, a lot of different topics. So if any of those things sound interesting, learn more by watching the rest of the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Dance Med Spotlight, where we talk about all things dance medicine and dance science. Today, I'm excited for my guest, Dr. Chelsea Pierotti.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. So my very first question for everybody is, tell me a little bit about who you are and what got you to this point of working with dancers in the way that you do.
Yes, I am first and foremost a college professor, and I teach psychology, and my expertise is sports psychology, but I do that with dancers. So I grew up a studio dancer, grew up with that whole life, the conventions every weekend, the competitions, all of that. Fell in love with ballet through that training process, did some summer intensives, and then was a professional ballet dancer my freshman year of college. I tried to do both. I really thought I could do both at the same time. I was a little naive, so that didn't last more than the year, and made the choice to focus on the academic goals that I have always had. So pursued a PhD in sports psychology, and now I work as a mental performance consultant, helping dancers with things like confidence and mental toughness, performance anxiety, all of the mental aspects of being a dancer.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that really is sort of underrated. It's easy to think about the physical side of it and being able to actually do the movements that we're asking of our bodies. But that mental piece is huge.
It is. It's huge whether we address it or not. So it's always there. And then you can choose to take that seriously and train it, just like you train your body. And it can really be the difference maker.
Yeah. So thinking about this idea of, maybe let's start with the topic of confidence. Maybe what is one of the big things that you tend to see with dancers that you've worked with?
So when I see dancers who are struggling with confidence, usually it's tied to a few things, but a lot of it is wrapped up in either comparison. So everything that they're looking at to determine whether or not they're successful is, what is everybody else doing? And for those of us of a certain generation of dancer, we were only comparing ourselves to the people in our studio and maybe some elite dancers who were at a competition twice a year. Now it's, who are you seeing on social media every day? Who is on TV? Who are these big stars? And so that comparison can really destroy a child's confidence when they're trying to learn dance. So comparison is usually a big root of the confidence issues, which is, I guess, similar to, on the other side of it is your sense of success. And like, I'm not good enough unless I am winning, unless my solo is first, unless I make that team. And so if that's the only way you're successful, it's hard to feel confident in your ability to get there.
Yeah. And I think, your point with, now we have social media and all of these things, is such a true one where, we didn't have those other sources for being able to sort of compare ourselves against, or even seeing things like TV shows that have become popular, things like Dance Moms, Dancing with the Stars, So You Think You Can Dance, all these different things. We just have so much more exposure of seeing dancers, not just if we happen to go to a show or a competition or something like that. And so, there are so many opportunities to have that kind of planted in front of us one way or another, whether we realize that we're paying attention to that or not.
Yeah, it could be comparison can be a positive thing, right? Like, we can see a dancer in a professional capacity and say, oh my gosh, they're amazing, I want to be like that, and let it be a source of inspiration. But the problem is when it's in your face every day, And usually we will go to social media when we're not in a great mental space and we're like cranky or tired and so that's when the scrolling and the comparison is usually not helpful and it just makes you feel worse about yourself. And, I had a rough day at class or, that performance didn't feel very good. I, didn't get what I wanted at competition. And then you scroll Instagram and see everybody else's highlights and see who's blowing up on TikTok and it's not going to help you feel any better about what you're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you kind of have to have some strategy going into some of the social media stuff, and I
Yeah.
see this, like, people who've listened to any number of episodes of the podcast know that I dance and compete in West Coast swing. And it's a style where we're seeing a lot more getting posted, mostly by the professionals on
Mhm.
social media. And I kind of see the two camps. There are either the folks who go on and they see that and they go, I'm never going to be able to do that, not taking that grain of salt of, but these are the like world professional
Mhm.
champions that I'm looking at, not
Yeah.
people who are at a similar level as I am or, intensity or that kind of thing. Or I see the folks who go, "Ooh, I see movements that I think are really cool. I want to use this as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
How can I learn to do that movement? How can I learn to, uh, you know, do some of this improv dance like they're doing?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's fascinating to see
Yeah.
amongst my peers also.
Yeah, it can absolutely be a source of inspiration. That's the hope. But I think we do have to go into it with that intention or with that goal in mind of like, okay, I need a source of inspiration or, I'm feeling, flat. I need something new. It can be great. And, but more often than not, it's that sense of, oh, I'll never be able to do that. And the other side of it I see with littler kids, like, if people like yourselves or adults are looking at it and they say, oh, I want to do that, we hope there's a little bit more awareness to, I want to do that. And it might take me a really long time to learn that. And that's okay.
Mhm,
But your average 8-year-old sees a professional and is like, I'm going to go try that tomorrow. And they feel like they should get that quickly, which is usually not safe and just not realistic. And the parents
mhm,
are, just at fault here too if they are not don't understand our dance world. They want, this elite level output on 2 rec classes a week and get
mhm.
upset at teachers when they don't reach that level or, are challenging and pushing their dancers. Why aren't you winning? It's like, because I've had 2 rec classes a week. This is not that level of training to your earlier point. So
Yeah.
it really distorts reality.
For sure. Thinking about this idea of confidence and comparison, also kind of flipping our lens a little bit, we've been talking about from the dancer's perspective. What about from dance educators or the dance parent, the folks who are supporting the dancers? What are some things that maybe they could do or just be aware of to kind of help support building confidence and
Mhm.
not getting into this kind of less than desirable version of
Yeah.
comparison?
Yes. So for both parents and teachers, I think having a focus on the broad term is a growth mindset, but unfortunately, I think that gets thrown around a little bit without being totally understood.
Mhm,
People feel like that means just be positive. And so if I'm just celebrating my dancer and I tell them they look amazing and great job today, and that positivity is wonderful and like keep the compliments coming. But that's not truly a growth mindset. A growth mindset is understanding that I can do things with time and effort. I can get there.
mhm.
But you understand the time and effort part
Yes.
where that's what gets lost a lot. So for parents and teachers, when your child or that young dancer is, upset that they can't achieve this new skill or they didn't get the role they wanted or they don't agree with judges' feedback, right? They're super disappointed. The adult, usually well-meaning, wants to like sweep in and protect their confidence and say, "Oh no, honey, you're so good. You're so talented. They don't know what they're talking about. You're amazing." And it feels good in the moment. You're like, I have to take away this bad feeling. I don't want my child to be so upset, or I don't want my dancer to feel bad about second place, right? So that's the instinct, but that actually harms their confidence
Mhm,
because it's removing their sense of competence. It's removing their sense of, I can do this. So when you have a dancer that is frustrated, upset, it's more helpful for their long-term confidence to help them have that reality check of like, there
mhm,
are things you're very good at and hold on to those and compliment them and focus on that growth and wins, but also focus on, okay, if you didn't get what you wanted today, what went really well, what are you proud of, and then what maybe didn't go as well, or where do we want to focus our growth this next week? What's our goal? And so even as a teacher, you can say, okay, this week, what are we focused on? Or this, solo rehearsal for the next 30 minutes, what's our goal today? What do we want to see improve? And narrowing the dancer's focus to themselves, again, get out of comparison. Doesn't matter what everybody else's solo did or what else happened at competition. What
Mhm.
do you want to focus on? So it's that combination of celebrating the strengths that are real and the growth that is real, but also encouraging them, yes, this is hard, but I believe you can do this. So let's put in the work and make this happen. And
Mhm.
that boosts confidence so much more than swooping in to protect them when they're sad. As much as, I mean, the mother in me, I so get that. You don't want your child to be upset, but the bigger picture is you're harming their confidence when you swoop in and fix it.
Mhm. One of the things that comes to mind as you're talking about that too, for me as a physical therapist working with dancers, sometimes they're coming in with feedback that they've gotten from judges or the teachers that they're working with or whomever, and they're getting really frustrated that they can't do a certain skill that they want to do or that they can't seem to overcome this feedback that they're getting. And one of the big conversations we always have too is like, well, part of it is maybe we need to figure out, is there something that, like, your body just maybe isn't ready for yet, but we can work towards getting it
Mhm.
ready? Is it something where we need some time to build up strength in a good way? What are ways that we can work towards that? And again, it's gonna take some time to do that,
Yeah.
but it's not just, "I don't get it, therefore I can't do this," or,
Right.
it
Yeah.
sometimes can be a little bit challenging, and one of the things that comes in too with some of that feedback is a lot of times it's coming from their group classes, not a private lesson or something like that. A dance educator is trying to teach to the group that's in front of them, and there's a limit of how much individual feedback and correction that they can provide in a given class period.
Right.
And so it's not unusual for some of those dancers to come in and it's like, they keep telling me to, have my arm in a better position, but I can't figure it out. And so I love those moments when we get to spend a little time in the clinic to kind of like troubleshoot and figure out how can you achieve the thing that you're feeling is a struggle right now.
Right.
And so knowing that there are outside sources to help support some of these things
Yeah.
is also a big part of it.
Yeah, that's exactly the growth mindset of like, yes, this is hard. And maybe, like you said, there really is a physical barrier in some way, whether that's strength or something, but it's how can we get there and what is realistic for me and how long might that take? And the same thing happens after injury, right? Like, okay, is recovery possible? If it is, and we're trying to rehab to get back to what I once was, having that realistic sense of time and that realistic sense of effort and what it will be, with that belief of this is hard, but I can do it. And I think that's
Mhm.
ultimately the beauty of what dance teaches us. Dance is hard and it takes a very long time to be good at it. So it is that pretty amazing life lesson that yes, this is hard and I can do it. And so we just have to take it to like the micro level of like class today, this one barrier, this one sense of rejection. It's hard, but I can do it with time and effort.
Mhm. Yes. That leads into kind of another topic of, okay, so particularly when we're having these moments of like, okay, this is hard, but I can do it. How can a dancer sort of find some of that motivation, especially when they're coming up against some of those challenges?
Mhm. So usually what gets in the way is some form of negative self-talk. That person in your head who is like, this is too hard. I can't do this. I'm tired, bad day at school. There's always that filter going on, right? Those thoughts that can be really derailing. And so I talk to dancers about it that you're training your brain just like you train your body. So if you've been dancing for a while and you go to put your arms in first position, you probably don't have to think about that position very much. Your arms just go there. Your muscles understand what that looks like and what that feels like. For a lot of dancers, the automatic negative thought, I call them ants. The automatic negative thought is the faster thought right now. So when the teacher gives you a skill or you keep falling out of your turns, you're struggling in some way, the automatic thought is that like, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm so frustrated." And then you just try again. But if your thoughts are on, "I can't do this. I'm so all the frustration," Your thought is not on, what do I do with my left shoulder to pull this in? How do I position? Like, you can't do the technical side because your
Mhm.
thoughts are all swooping in the negative. So just like you train your muscles to have a proper placement without a lot of thought, you have to train your thoughts to have the more positive, productive response to frustration. And again, it takes time and effort. It's not something you're going to be
Mhm.
like, oh, I get it now, and it'll be magically better tomorrow. But the more you practice it, the better. And so it's really about awareness where you notice, oh, there's that negative thought again, not helpful. What do I need to do right now? And one of the
Mhm.
few things you can control is your focus and what you're paying attention to. So choosing to focus on either the positive, sometimes that's helpful and encouraging. It's okay. I've got this. A lot of dancers, especially teenagers I talk to, being positive feels fake. They're like, I
Mhm.
can't be happy and be positive. I'm really annoyed right now.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's fair. So then I say, go technical, right? So go, what do I need to feel in my core? What should my shoulders do? Where is my epama? Like, you think about the technical side to distract. And that can also,
Mhm.
again, put your focus back on, what am I trying to actually do? Hear the feedback from my teacher. How do I feel that on my body? To redirect. So that was a little long way around, but the idea being you're practicing it to have that
Yeah.
different response, just like you would practice and train your muscles.
Mhm. And I mean, it takes time, takes continued practice even when you feel like, "Okay, I think I've got this figured out."
Mhm.
And then something new pops up and you go, "Oh, okay, maybe not. Let me work on this
Right.
in a new
Oh,
way."
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm an adult and an expert in this, and I still have challenges all the time. Comparison comes up for me all the time. I know that
Mhm.
that's one of my, I call them fixed mindset triggers. It's the thing that will come up and I am immediately back in a fixed mindset. And so it's the understanding that these negative thoughts, the fixed mindset thoughts, the frustrations are not going to go away. So like a confident dancer still has those thoughts. They just know how to handle them better. So it's not
Yes.
trying to make them stop. It's not trying to say like I can never have that negative thought. I can never have that reaction. That's not real. Our brains are trying to protect us. And so
Mhm.
it's normal. It's just that a confident dancer, a mentally tough dancer has learned the strategy to say, again, new thing came up. Okay, now what? All right, I have a plan. I have strategy. I know how to do this.
Mhm. I know one thing I've even done for myself in the West Coast swing world. So, a little background, it's when we're competing, the area that earns us points to move up in levels and that kind of thing over time, it's 100% improvised with a partner that you don't know until that moment, and you don't know what you're gonna dance to until it
Yeah.
starts to play. So, it is completely off the cuff and improvised. It's really easy because you're getting judged as a pair as well. If something doesn't go well, to either feel like you're just blaming your partner or go like, "Oh, what is it that people aren't seeing in me? What am I doing wrong?" And that kind of
Mm.
thing, or, "I never get past this certain point." I've actually started tracking for myself because I'm a spreadsheet nerd.
Yep.
I started tracking for myself how many dancers are in heats and where I actually place and, like, kind of doing some of the math. And when I do the math, I actually am doing a lot better than what it
Mm.
feels like.
Right.
And even some of my friends have figured out that this is something that I do. And so when I have moments where I'm like, why isn't this working? Or why am I not doing well? Now they just look at me and they go, have you looked at your spreadsheet recently?
Yes. That kind of evidence is so powerful to be able to,
Mhm.
like, pause. What's real in this moment? And that's the other
Exactly.
thing is, like, our thoughts are not always real. They're not always true. And
Yeah.
sometimes we just automatically we're like, "Well, if I think I'm not getting any better, that must be true." And
Yeah.
it's usually not necessarily true. And it's nice to have this, like, outside evidence of, like, "Okay, I am getting better. Deep breath.
Mhm.
Let's try this again."
Mhm. And even thinking of, kind of traditional studio-based dance competitions, it can also be really easy because there are only so many placements, only so many trophies that can happen at a given weekend to kind of go, "Well, I haven't gotten that trophy or I haven't gotten to a certain level." And it's like, "Well, but out of 100 dancers,
Mhm.
how many placements were there even to have?" Or that kind of thing. And so it's like it's also a different perspective when we're
Yeah.
in that almost like ranked type
Right.
of competition.
Absolutely. And I think those outcome goals of I want to move up to the next level, I want to be top 5, those are all what we call those outcome goals. And for a lot of dancers, that's your only measure of success. Like,
Yeah.
it's this weekend was only worth it if I moved up a level. This was only worth it if I made top 5. And that narrow focus usually makes a lot of these mental skills harder. It hurts your confidence, it hurts your mental toughness, it hurts your motivation to show up on Monday's class. Like it's makes that all more challenging. And so I always try to tell dancers, like, if you are competitive, if that's a drive for you, that's really fun, cool. Hold on to that goal, have that long-term goal. But there also has to be a sense of success that is in your control.
Mhm.
So how you showed up, is it sometimes it's in your preparation. I made sure I ate well this morning. I have my bag packed. I was not stressed. I wasn't rushed when we got there. All of my costumes were prepared. And like a success would be I reduced my stress by making sure all of this was ready. Or success would be I keep getting comments about my performance quality. I'm going to really focus on holding that during the technical parts of my routine.
Yeah.
And knowing that you can see growth, back to your spreadsheet point, it's like you need to find growth in the smaller moments that you had something to do with, that you can control. That's not just a judge's opinion, because that
Mhm.
you can't put all of your success on somebody else's opinion,
Yeah.
including your teachers, your parents, all of it.
Yeah, definitely. It also makes me think and kind of taking us down another route a little bit, but something that I see with the dancers that I work with, again, kind of from the more physical side of things. Sometimes if we've been working through injury or working on just improving overall performance and that sort of thing, I always am happy when they come in and they say, like, "I felt like I had better energy throughout the weekend because I prepared well," or, "I was able to do more of my dances and not have some of that pain pop up that has been an issue. So, like, I can tell
Mhm.
that my body is handling this better and is becoming more
Yeah,
resilient to what I'm doing too." So
yeah.
that's some of the way that I see it also from the physical side.
For sure. When it's so helpful for a dancer to notice, like, oh, this hard work and training is paying off. And paying off, quote unquote, is not just winning. It's I feel better at the end of the weekend. I felt stronger. I felt, I could recover faster. Like all of that are huge wins to notice that the hard work in the class, the hard work in your training is paying off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So this kind of takes us down this other route a little bit, but thinking about when a dancer has experienced injury or pain or something
Mhm.
like that, let's maybe start with kind of that like initial phase of I've just gotten injured. I'm worried. Now what?
No, right. Yes. So usually immediately after an injury, there's thoughts around it. There's gonna be what a psychologist would call a cognitive interpretation. You have thoughts about what happened, and you can interpret it as, "My career is over, everything's ruined, my entire season's over," or you can interpret it as this, you can still be mad, right? I'm like, "This sucks, I'm mad, I'm
Mhm,
frustrated, but also I can figure this out and I can get there." And so there's this initial interpretation of what happened. And that the power of it is that interpretation changes your emotional response. So
mhm,
if your interpretation is, or, maybe you're blaming somebody else, right? You're mad at the Florida competition. You're mad at a teammate who did something that like got in your way on stage. So if you have this emotional response of anger, or if your interpretation is more of like, this is a terrible accident and I'm frustrated, but I'll be okay. And I can have the emotional response of maybe sadness initially. And please like sit in that sadness and understand that that's okay. But
mhm,
then being able to say, how do I take that forward? What am I going to learn from this? What is the lesson from this? And that changes your behavioral response. That changes like how you show up in physical therapy. That shit changes if you do your homework. That changes how you approach class. Like for a lot of dancers, when you're injured, you still go to class and sit and watch.
mhm,
And so what does that behavior look like? Are you able to sit there and just, are you going to sit there and just stew in your negative emotions and be mad? Or are you going to sit there and say, what can I learn from sitting here? What can I learn about how people are listening to their teachers or not? Or what can I learn from how that person is moving? And I like that. And so it starts with the initial thoughts about it, which impact
mhm.
your emotions around it, which impact how you actually behave around it. And it's that
Yes.
sequence is always true and it's always going to happen over and over again. And so the first step when you were asking, like when an injury just happens, is to take some time with your thoughts around it and not let the
Mhm.
train run away from this is awful. Everything is over. Now I'm angry. And then now your behavior is going to be to shut down.
Yeah. Well, and there's also research out there that supports the idea that people who are approaching recovery and rehab from an injury with a more positive mindset of like, I can get through this, I can improve and, get back to what I was doing before, tend to have better outcomes than the people who stay in that more negative
Mhm.
outlook perpetually
Oh,
through that
absolutely.
process.
Yeah, that mind-body connection is so powerful. And so
Mhm.
if you're going to rehab, but you're just showing up and going through the motions, you're not gonna have the same positive benefit as if you go into it, again, "This is hard, but I've got this, and I'm going to intentionally think about which muscles are engaged and which are not, and how, not being too frustrated by my loss of flexibility. Am I a little few degrees further than I was last week?" Like, just
Mhm.
recalibrating, and it's all the same mental skills that are helpful. So, goal setting, using imagery, using relaxation, all of those are still helpful. And so, hopefully, if dancers have learned them and have trained them, then when you're hurt, it's the same tools. It's the same thing
Mhm.
to go back to try to get yourself back to where you want to be. And I was talking to a professional ballerina recently, and I asked her, I think, about it. I was like, "Have you ever been injured?" And she kind of laughed at me. She was like, "Oh, here's the list." There were like so
Right.
many things. And the first few, she was really angry, then she started to look at it more of like, "What is the gift of this injury? What am I getting that
Mhm.
I wouldn't have had if this didn't happen? What's the lesson here? What else am I gaining?" And there was always something to be gained if that's your perspective.
Mhm. One of the things that I sometimes hear from colleagues who, again, are working on the more physical side of rehab and recovery and that kind of thing, is also this idea of a lot of times people come into the rehab process with the mindset of, I want to get back to where I had been when I got injured.
Mhm.
But now there's this discussion of, well, but what if we can get you even better than before? Because where you were when you got injured, maybe there already was something there that kind of made you a little bit more prone to that injury or something like that. So what if we can get you even stronger, even more stable in your flexibility, even better balance? And so
Yeah,
like let's take you to that next level before
yeah.
you finish the rehab process. And that's something that I sometimes see as a struggle for dancers as well, because it's sort of, time is precious. There's only so much time and energy and money and all the things. And so thinking about that going the extra bit can sometimes be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, oh, I bet. And that it's the goal setting piece again, like, what is the end goal? Is the end goal to feel the same? And then having that realistic conversation, is that possible? Or is it actually even possible to do more, as you're saying? And like, what is that goal? Because that can be really exciting. And for
Mhm.
most dancers who are struggling with injury, if they have that kind of negative reaction, or like you were saying, this is 6 months, I don't have 6 months to lose. Like, I can't be out that long. Fully understand that. The A lot of it comes back to their sense of self as a dancer. So if you ask any dancer, like, I am a dancer. It's who I am, it's what I love, it's all I do, it's my whole life. So it's so much of who you are that an injury can feel like, well, if I'm not dancing, I'm nothing. I have
Mhm.
nothing else left. Like, that's the only thing that matters. And so a lot of, I think, the mental side of this injury rehab comes back to this athlete identity. It can be really positive because you can say, okay, I'm an athlete. I'm going to attack this rehab just like I attack any other class. We're going to figure this out and take a positive approach to it. Or it can be really debilitating and deciding, like, well, if I'm not a dancer, then there's no point. And so being able to find some of that identity work of like, yes, you're a dancer, but you are also, what else? What else is in your life that still matters, and being able to find that balance. Because a lot of times the injury, like you said, there was something else happening before that.
Mhm.
Research also tells us you are so much more prone to injury when you're stressed. So if there's a lot of stress happening in your life, and now this injury has forced you to pause, being able to take the time to look at the identity and look at, who am I? What do I want? What do I care about? Can be a really powerful positive shift to get back
Mhm.
stronger, physically stronger, a better dancer than you were, but also a better sense of self, a better sense of, I love dance and I love this part of me, but I also enjoy these hobbies. I also love being a sister. I also love having my friends who are not dancers and enjoying
Mhm.
other aspects of my life. So being able to have like forcing to find that balance can make the rehab process better and make it more likely that you will get even better, which I love. That's such a great point that dancers can actually be stronger after.
Well, and with something that you said too, it's like going back to an earlier thing where, we were talking about there's so many sort of life skills that we can learn from dance. The exact point that you were just making is
Mhm.
something that I've been able to pull into my own, outside of my dance world and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
private practice as a physical therapist. I used to early on when I would have cancellations or things like that, it was like, "Oh no, that means that I'm not making money and what am I," it was like this panic of what am I going to do about this? But
Yeah.
now I see it as, you know what? That just gave me a gift of another hour to do other things that I need to take care of and maybe decrease some of that stress that I was feeling
Mhm.
because my to-do list was feeling really long or, and man, it makes it so much easier when some of those things come up to be able to look at it like that. And not that
Mhm.
it works every time or not that I think about it every time in that way, but just being able to go back to that skill
Mhm.
just makes it all a little easier.
Oh, the skill is so powerful as we get older, and it is finding that balance that helps you be able to, yeah, have that bigger perspective, understand it's more than just this. It's more than I am more than a dancer or I am more than this injury. And it does help that balance when you can stuff comes up and be able to have that identity. And I do think it is also it becomes most apparent when a dancer's career is over, whether that's because
Mhm.
of an injury or because they graduated high school and chose not to continue, or, they're on a college team and they graduate and there's not another step. Uh, I think sometimes the end of your career is your choice, and
Mhm.
oftentimes it's not. And so that athlete identity is very powerful there, because if your sense of being a dancer is your only sense of self and that ends, it is more devastating, right? It's really
Mhm.
hard to transition to say, "Who else am I if I'm not working in this place?" So, finding that athlete identity when you're younger, being able to have the balance in your teens and not waiting to figure it out as an adult,
Mhm.
so hard, but very really valuable and helpful that I try to encourage all the teenage dancers out there to start looking at that more balanced perspective.
Mhm. One of the themes that I'm definitely hearing as we're talking about different ideas here too is this idea of like there are things that you can already work on even if you're not in a place of rehabbing from injury or being really frustrated with your progress or struggling
Mhm.
with comparison and confidence and that sort of thing. And I think that that's a really important point to highlight for folks because I think it is so easy for us to not even consider some of those things until we are in those difficult times.
Yeah.
Versus if we find opportunities to work on some of that ahead of time, we're a bit better prepared when something does come up.
Oh, absolutely. And back to your earlier question about confidence, if we look at how to build it, it is learning how to take on really small challenges and feeling like, "Okay, I did that. I got a little bit better. Okay, I can do the next thing." And so if you do that over and over and over, getting more and more complicated, then when the big thing happens, you have more confidence in it.
Mhm.
But it could be the smallest little thing, and it's not just dance. It's, being nervous about raising my hand in class. It's being nervous about like, "Oh, I'm gonna go stand in front today." I'm gonna go,
Mhm.
take on those small challenges and notice I was a little nervous, but I took a deep breath and I went and stood in front. Or I, held my head high when I walked out of that audition. Like, you have those small places to practice
Mhm.
controlling your emotions and being confident in the little moments when it doesn't feel like it. To your point, we're like, I don't need to practice being confident. To maybe for some dancers, raising your hand in class is not anxiety provoking. They're like, I talk in
Mhm.
class all the time. So it doesn't feel like a place to practice it. So it's noticing, what is that little place of uncomfortable feeling for you? What makes you just a little uncomfortable? Now try that. And then what makes that a little more uncomfortable? Try that. And you keep progressing it so that, exactly as you said, when the big thing does rock your confidence, you have this track record of like, nope, things come and I know how to handle it. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing with practicing for being nervous on stage. It's all the same kind of concept, but being able to handle the small things, exactly those life lessons, like you're saying, that practice is dance is just the way that we get to learn that, which is
Mhm.
wonderful.
Mhm. Exactly. And a lot of times we don't appreciate that until we're years down the road or
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
even removed from the dance world. We're no longer dancing and training and that sort of thing.
absolutely.
It's like, "Oh, yeah, I
Yep.
did learn that
I
there."
know I had so many of my peers in grad school, and if you had a similar grad school experience, were peers who were really struggling with the long-term nature of it. They're like,
Mhm,
"How long this is gonna take so long, I can't do," like, they couldn't persist that long, and this sounds flippant, but, like, it actually wasn't that hard to persist for me. Like, yes, this degree took forever, but, like, I'm cool. I know that these goals take a really long time, and
mhm,
dance taught me how to say, "Small goal, first chunk. Let's just attack this. Let's not worry about the thing that's 4 years from now. What do I need to do today?" And
mhm.
I just handled grad school better because of what dance taught me. And
Yeah,
still hard, still challenging, but to your point, I didn't realize that I got that strategy from dance until I was around peers who were in a stressful situation and didn't have that, like, long-term perseverance skill.
mhm. Time management is another one that I
Yeah.
definitely learned from dance. Between school and dance and all the different things
Yep.
where, I have 2 hours tonight to do homework unless I wanna be up super late doing
Yep.
it. How can I manage my time to get this done or do my studying or whatever the case may be?
Yep.
And now there's times where, I have peers and friends who see my schedule and they're like, "How do you do all of these
Oh,
different things?" It's like, I don't know.
right.
I figured it out along the way."
Exactly. Oh, I'm the same. I essentially have 2 full-time jobs, but I love them both and they're both passion-filled. So
Mhm.
and I can balance it. Like, it's the same. Like, "How do you have all of these?" I'm like, I love what I do, so it's not a big task, and I'm just real efficient. I can
Mhm.
get stuff done and to
Mhm.
prioritize what matters in the moment." And same, I don't think I knew at the time that, like, oh, that high level of scheduled training taught me how to figure this out to balance
Mhm.
what I want later. Yeah. So grateful for so many of the skills I got in dance.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We've talked quite a bit about things from the dancers' perspectives themselves. I wanna go back and talk about the dance educators
Yeah.
and some of the things that they can maybe do to help support their dancers, help set them up for success with some of these different things. What are some other things that maybe come up, when you're working from the dance educator side?
Sure. So for dance educators, it's about creating the environment that helps the dancers do all the things we're talking about. So helping to set the stage that in class, you're only worried about you. You're not worried about the comparison piece. It's your own growth. So that can be in how you give feedback. It can be in what you choose to praise publicly versus privately, like making those opportunities that your class is a space where we celebrate individual growth and progress, not ranking and hierarchy, where
Mhm.
you're able to create an environment that values the whole dancer, not just what they can execute and what they can't. So, getting to know your dancers, having that connection with them. And there's always the boundaries, right? You're not their therapist, you're not their parent, and protect yourself as well. But setting up your classroom, your rehearsal space to be one of encouraging the growth mindset, to be focused on individual progress, to set really small goals. And so I think educators have the power to ask the right questions to get the dancers to think about the things we're talking about. So to get them to reflect on, what are you really proud of about that last competition? If there's something you're not as happy about, what can we do to make it better? Rather than just running the routine over and over again, what feedback do we get that we want to implement? Like, bring them in on the conversation. Okay, well, the
Mhm.
judges were talking about this. How do we fix that today? Is it something we just need to clean in the routine? Is there something we want to change about our strength training routines? And
Mhm.
when teachers are like, "Oh, I can't get my dancers to be motivated to take turns and leaps or to take strength and conditioning," I was like, "But if you've tied it back to, we want this team skill, or we want this, uh, ranking later. We want this achievement, but you can bring them into the conversation of like, that's cool. I love that. How do we get there? We need XYZ to be stronger. How do we get there? We're going to add a strength and conditioning for 45 minutes a week, right? Or whatever that looks like."
Mhm.
And if the dancers are in on that process, okay, I see it. That's what I want. It's not going to happen by just showing up and doing rote repetition. I need to change how I'm training to make that
Yes.
happen. And then you see the motivation and all that. So many ways I could go off and be long-winded about
Mhm.
it, but the idea is you're creating the environment to help dancers reflect on all of these concepts to get them thinking about it.
Hmm. I really like when you were also saying, you as a dance educator, you don't need to be their therapist, their parent, their whatever. Dance educators already wear enough hats. There's enough going on. We don't need to
Yeah.
add to the list. And I think that's another place where if they ahead of time before something comes up,
Mhm.
they establish who are other resources or what are other resources that they can utilize, whether it is having somebody like an established mental health coach or physical therapist or whomever that they can refer somebody to or bring in for a session or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. Maybe it's just a list of contacts that's hanging in the bathroom so that if somebody has something come up, they're like, oh, I can go look up a phone
Mhm.
number for somebody.
Oh, yeah.
But doing some of that prep work and setting things up ahead of time
Yeah.
can be really helpful.
Oh, sure. It's helpful for your dancers to have that resource. And then for you as a teacher, when something happens, because it always happens in the most stressful times, because stress
Mhm.
brings on all of these extra challenges, that you have your own resource. And back to this like efficiency, I'm also the spreadsheet person. I have so many email templates of like, when I get this question, this is how I answer it, because you just get the same
Mhm.
question all the time. And so those small ways that you can say, when this is going on, this is how I respond, or this is who I can refer them to, this is how I encourage them. And of course, there's a balance. It doesn't mean you're a robot and answer the same to everybody, but that you have the known resources that you're not up until 2 a.m. trying to find for this dancer. You know what to send them, and you can do that easily. And you've set it up ahead of time. And your relationships are always going to be a little different, right? There's some dancers that have more social support.
Mhm.
They have more friends at the studio. They have a better life at home. They have an identity outside of dance. So maybe they have a teacher that they're close to. And then you have dancers where you may be it.
Mhm.
And that's okay too. And knowing who those dancers are and how you can support them. So I don't think there's a one size fits all to how to hold those boundaries, uh,
Yeah.
but being able to be that source of support, whatever that looks like. You're the one giving it, or you're the one rerouting them to the right person. Those are both equally wonderful ways to be supportive.
Mhm. One thing that I've also seen come up because, being in the dance world, I'm also in a lot of the different, like, dance teacher groups online and different things like that, kinda seeing conversations that are happening.
Yeah.
And one of the recommendations that I see come up a lot from the studio owner perspective in particular is having policies and procedures in place so that dance teachers within the studio also can go back to a resource to rely on rather than feeling like they're kind of floundering to find the answer themselves or that kind of thing. And so I've even seen in some occasions where there's even sort of a policy in place if a dancer gets injured, here are questions to ask. Here are people that we can refer to if we need it. And they just
Mhm.
kind of have this little almost algorithm that they
Yes.
can work through so that, again, they're not scrambling
Yeah.
when something comes up.
Oh, that makes a huge difference. And it goes back to, as a studio owner, if you have your values, what do you stand for? What do you want to create in your studio? What's the environment here? That's been clearly communicated. And then that also leads to your policies. How do you handle a parent who's complaining about somebody else's child? How do you handle an injury in the moment? All the emergency management stuff. How do you handle
Yep.
any of that? And how do you handle questions about costume? How do you, like, what do you do for all of that as much as you can lay it out? But then having the time to have the education to the teachers, because the teacher knows, okay, these challenges will happen and I have a plan. And that
Mhm.
is so helpful for confidence in any context. We do the same thing with a dancer who's nervous about being on stage. Okay, let's make a plan. You know what's going to come. So let's make a plan for what to do when that thing happens. And that gives you
Mhm.
confidence. Not that these bad things will never happen, but that when they do, I know what to do about it. And so
Yes.
being the studio owner who has the opportunity to create that safe space helps your teachers so much. And then the back end benefit of that is your teachers all handle it the same way. And
Mhm.
that makes a huge difference in culture and response to parents and response to injuries, that there's not favoritism. I was just writing something about favoritism, and it's like that consistent communication and consistent reaction to things makes a huge difference. And a lot of that might
Mhm.
start on exactly what you were saying, the sense of like values and policies in place, that everybody has a plan and will be treated similarly.
Mhm. Well, and that idea of favoritism is a huge one. It's something where I find particularly the dancers who are more involved in the competitive space or maybe vocational programs or that kind of stuff, sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, I don't know, hypothetical other student in the studio, Susie. Susie always is the one that the teacher asks to demonstrate things, or Susie's
Mhm.
always getting picked for some of these special roles, and it's really challenging to hear
Yeah.
that sometimes from some of these dancers, where it's like, they are fantastic humans and fantastic dancers in their own right, but to feel like they are less than
Mhm.
somebody else who seems to get a lot of attention in the class,
Yeah.
is unfortunate.
It is, and it goes back to comparison because
Mhm.
then that child is only focused on how many times did that person get to demonstrate and how many times did I? How many times did that person get to be in front versus me, rather than being in their own lane? And
Mhm.
favoritism, whether it's real or perceived, is just as dangerous. And sometimes it's real and teachers are not great about it and they are blatant about favorites. And other times the favoritism is actually not about favoritism. The teacher is like appropriately assigning roles and rewarding students for their talent and their work ethic. But to a different dancer, it feels like favoritism. It feels like, well, they didn't earn that, or they just got it handed to them. They don't recognize the work ethic and, the stuff that went into it for that dancer to have earned it. So favoritism is so challenging when it's not something we talk about. We just sort of like, oh, it's there, or the dancer just goes home and complains about it, and then the parent complains about it. And rather than being able to shift back to, again, what's in my control as a dancer, get out of the comparison. What can I focus on here, to be able to stay focused on your own growth and goals is one of the biggest, like, cognitive, the best way to mentally get yourself out of that favoritism trap is to figure out how to stay in your own lane if it's
Mhm.
real, right?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this is a good opportunity for a special segment on the show. So, on every episode of Dance Med Spotlight, we have the final bow, essentially the take home message. We've talked about a lot of different things, aimed it at a lot of different audience members. If people walk away with one or two highlights from this entire conversation, what are some things that you hope they walk away with?
I would love for dancers, educators, parents to understand how much is in your control, and when you focus on what's in your control, how much mental toughness and resilience comes from that. So my common phrase is control the controllables. When you feel the negative thoughts spiraling, when you are frustrated with your dancers, with the parents, with whatever is happening, that go back to what's in your control. Your actions, your actual behavior is in your control. Your, what you're focused on, what you're paying attention to is in your control, and ultimately your effort. And if you stay in that narrow lens, it helps with all the mental toughness. It helps with the growth mindset, with the resilience, with changing the negative thoughts, with handling challenging parents, with dealing with favoritism. It's all can be kind of boiled down to this focus of control the controllables in this moment. And so that can be a little mantra to take with you to help control some of this mental toughness.
I love that.
Yeah.
Last and certainly not least, we have the shameless plug. So, this is your opportunity to promote anything that you have going on, any organization that you want to promote. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I would love to share my own podcast. So if you're here and listening and have found this helpful or want to know more about mental toughness and resilience and mindset as a dancer, my podcast is called Passion for Dance. Hundreds of episodes now about all things mental toughness, resilience, confidence, mindset. And you can find that wherever you get your podcasts, Passion for Dance, or look it up at passionfordancepodcast.com.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for your time today. It was great getting to chat with you.
Same. Thank you so much for having me.
Dance Med Spotlight is hosted and produced by Alyssa Arms. We discuss all things dance medicine. This has been another episode from Dance Med Spotlight. The Dance Med Spotlight is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present.